Hey, my name is Joseph, and it's finally time to get our own hands-on impressions of the Steam Deck. But not just any old Steam Deck, the Steam Deck OLED. But as you may see from the title, this is not just a review of the Steam Deck OLED, but rather a comprehensive recap of the big three handhelds, as well as my updated thoughts to tell you why everyone, and I mean everyone, should have a handheld like these. Which one will it be, and for what reason? Is there a definitive winner, or does it depend? Let's answer that over the course of this video. Okay, so first, a few disclaimers. First, those of you that saw the Legion Go video may remember me saying that I don't want to be a handheld review channel, but at the same time, I felt like we couldn't end the handheld review saga without finishing on the one and only Steam Deck OLED. And trilogies are always cooler, right? Let me tell you, I'm really happy that we got to end on this one, but stick around to find out why. Second, this video is not sponsored. No, Valve, get that money out of here. You ignored my email first. We're gonna be as unbiased as possible, right? This is my money on the line, just as it has been with the Legion Go and the ROG Ally. And finally, we're only gonna be doing a mini review of the Steam Deck, then comparing all three devices at a surface level. You day one folks know that I don't do much of the technical stuff like talk about how many hot pockets you get per square nanometer or how many grams lighter the Steam Deck is than a bag of cocaine. That stuff gets talked about to death, and I just want to share my very consumer nerd-based personal experience. I take these out of the box and I fiddle with them for a few days, but I'm still just someone that wants to game first and foremost. So before I tell you if the Steam Deck OLED lives up to my wildest dreams, let me give you a recap in under a minute of the last year of handhelds.
Flashback.
Steam Deck. Neo, GPT Win, Steam Deck. Oh no, I can't play Destiny 2, not that I wanted to.
Many months later.
Ooh, ROG Ally, 1080p, 120Hz, it's running Windows, and I just walked into Best Buy to get one. Nice. Oh no, my SD card. Oh, my battery life. Oh.
Several months later.
Whoa, big screen, 1600p, 144Hz. 2 USB-C ports? A big battery? Joy-Cons? Oh, so it's broken. Cool. Okay. Well, there couldn't possibly be another handheld device coming out too soon, right?
298 frozen patties later.
Oh, holy.
End of flashback.
If you want more detail, then pause the video and go watch the other reviews, then come back. The ROG Ally vid will give you my personal history with handhelds before the actual review, and the Legion Go will give you a slightly more in-depth analysis of the Legion Go versus the Ally. Now, let's quickly recap updates for these devices since launch. For reference, all of these devices are using an AMD chipset, but the Steam Deck is using a custom Van Gogh processor, which I just want to point out because that's a kind of cool name. On the other hand, the Legion and the Ally are using the C1 Extreme chip, which is basically the standard in handheld devices right now. In terms of using each device and keeping them updated, here's what a day in the life of each device looks like. Time to do my daily update check of the Legion Go subreddit. Oh, hey, Ben Myers posted from Lenovo. Oh, sweet, new drivers just launched. Alright, time to go to this link, press download, click on the file, let it do its thing. Okay, maybe do a restart. Did it work? Let's check the version number and test it out. Okay, yeah, looks like it works. Good coffee. Huh. I should check if a new ROG Ally update's out. Oh, nice, there it is. Download, install, restart. Yeah, I trust it. It's worked before. Huh. It's been a week since I last updated my Steam Deck. Let's do a quick check here. Huh, nothing yet, I guess. Now, don't get me wrong. You could be the kind of person that never updates their device for some reason, or always updates it no matter what. But what I'm getting at is, if you're going to want the most out of your device, then sometimes that means doing your homework, and each device comes with its own level of effort. Granted, it could be that all three of these devices in the coming months become a sort of set and forget device, where the updates are easy and trustworthy. But right now, I see many people that want to roll back their drivers on the ROG Ally when there's a change in thermals or performance, and a lot of users on the Legion side foaming at the mouth for any Chinese beta drivers to give them even a slight boost. Let's talk about the updates on the ROG Ally. Asus has been pretty consistent with their BIOS updates, and currently they have the AMD drivers from October 16th. Sure, it is December now, but keep that in mind when we talk about the Legion Go. The Ally's latest BIOS update had two big features. Number one being gyro, and not a lot to say here, they're cool. You can set a button on a per game profile in the armory crate, and usually that's going to be the left trigger. The Legion Go has gyros, but not the option to trigger as far as I know, so it's just kind of on all the time. And the Steam Steam Deck has gyro, and you can use it in a much more manageable Steam controller input part of the controller configuration. The next interesting thing though is the CPU boost toggle, and playing a super light game like the KFC dating sim, you don't need a CPU running at max power. To quote Spider-Man 2,
"That'd be like using a shotgun for a haircut."
In most circumstances, frame rate will be unaffected, and you'll just get a lower TDP and slightly better battery life. However, in my testing with a few big games like Elden Ring or Cyberpunk, it does basically nothing, and there's no real performance difference. The CPU will still run at the speed it needs, since these games are already demanding. Other than those updates, the rest is basically simple stuff like controller calibration or incremental performance upgrades. Now as for the Legion Go, I'm kinda glad I waited to do this video since a few updates here have come that are pretty substantial. For example, the handheld community has deemed that 6GB of VRAM is much better than 4, and 5 is kind of a sweet spot. Right now, the ROG Ally lets you set anywhere from 1 to 8 or just do auto, but auto isn't always perfect, so just stick with 5 or 6. The Legion Go just this month patched in 6, right between 4 and 8. So that closes the gap a little bit in terms of prime performance. Hey, Joseph from the future here, maybe the past for you, I don't know. Anyways, back home for the holidays, so please excuse the slightly different mic quality. Long story short, I want to talk about 6GB of VRAM. You may have games crashing on you, and you may not know why. And what happened to me is that when you set the 6GB of VRAM setting, you're going to take up more of your RAM, so you'll have less RAM. And what's going to happen is that if you don't have enough RAM to run a game, then your system is going to go to your SSD storage to just get any storage you can, and caching textures and all that. What happened to me is that I had only like 3GB of storage left. Long story short, I just deleted a few games and bada bing bada boom, games stopped crashing. If you want more details, leave a comment and I'll tell you about it. If your games are crashing on 6GB of VRAM setting, then that might be the solution. This never happened to me on 4GB, so that's probably a big reason why this is a memory issue, but yeah, just something to keep in mind. Basically, the device steals the extra memory from the RAM and uses it as VRAM. So it's like if you're using 2 notebooks to study and you're ripping out pages from one notebook because your other notebook's getting full. You don't want to rip out more pages than you need, otherwise now your other notebook's full and you're going to fail the class and your parents are going to send you back to the motherland. To be honest, that's basically it. There are other settings like memory speed and something called stamp, but for those of you that want to do that, do your homework on that, unless you want to copy me, because these settings are kind of what I settled on. Hey, Joseph from back home again, and I have to update you on this because as of December 22nd, very close to Christmas, Lenovo has actually released new AMD drivers, and these AMD drivers are from November 17th, more or less. It's actually pretty groundbreaking because these are actually now newer than the drivers on the ROG Ally, and also groundbreaking because on this part of the video, I was going to complain about how the Lenovo was running on September AMD drivers when this thing came out in November. So doing a way better job here on the driver side, and yeah, it brings up performance a little bit more close to the Ally, and yeah, really good update, and we'll talk about more in the performance section. Moving on to the deck of the hour. If you were keeping an ear out, then you know it released a high praise for improving on almost everything that made the LCD version the less appealing option. But I never had an LCD Steam Deck, so I'm coming into this completely fresh and blind to any real upgrades. With that being said, my mini review can boil down to the following. I really like the OLED screen, but I don't love the resolution. I'll talk more about that in the comparisons, but at night, the inky blacks on this display are really impressive. It's almost like it blends into the rest of the device. I also like the ergonomics of this device. When I hold all 3 of these, the Steam Deck almost fits in my hands like a glove. Moreover, the battery life on this thing is insane, but again, more on that later. Using SteamOS and Linux is not as bad as I thought it would be. I got my emulators and launchers working just fine, thanks to all the work that has been done to support the deck from Valve and folks over at the Heroic Launcher and Chiaki and even EmuDeck. Still, when people say that the deck feels the most like a console, they're right. This has been the most painless setup for a device I've had so far. But I acknowledge that at this point, the device is over a year old, so it's not exactly a fair comparison. However, I also love the way that I can set TDP on the per watt level pretty easily and set my balance between performance and battery life. But I'm a bit sad that it does max out at 15 watts when I've been used to the other devices. Still, basically, I love everything about this device other than the relatively low TDP settings and the low display resolution. I hate to say that I don't really have all that much to say about the Steam Deck that hasn't been praised and recorded a dozen times over by other reviewers, but yeah, 1 year in, it works awesome and I don't really have much to say about it. Good job, Valve. That's it, really. With that in mind, how do the other 2 devices do compared to the deck? Well, starting off with something I already mentioned, that is displays. I'm very much a display person. Like on any device, huge bezels and low color accuracy are my biggest pet peeves. That being said, the thing I like least on the Steam Deck OLED is that it's still 800p. Now don't be mad, I get why it's 800p, and that on a display this size, anything higher is not that noticeable, and it even will help your performance. But would it really hurt to at least give us the option, like on some of these Windows devices? The Legion Go has no business being 1600p, but it can, and it looks crisp in some of my 2D games. I ran a poll on the Legion Go subreddit and found that most people will run most of their games at 800p to get better frame rates. Blurry pixelation be damned, but for me, if my game is running at 80 FPS at 800p, and I can do 1200p to get a solid 60 still, I'll take the hit. It's kind of my preference there. On the topic of frame rates, I also want to add that both the Steam Deck and the Legion do not support variable refresh rate. On the Steam Deck, I don't mind because you can set your own refresh rate literally by the digit. So if you know you're averaging 40 FPS, then just drag that sucker down to smooth things out. On the Legion Go, it's disappointing because we don't get another option. Sure, 144 Hz is supposed to make those drop frames feel less frequent, but sometimes it still bites you right in the eyes. But even if you do get a high-res, high-refresh rate display, you won't often get to use all of it. If your dream is to run Red Dead Redemption 2 at 144 FPS and 1600p on the Legion Go, then your best bet is to go to sleep and keep dreaming. Plain and simple, if you care a lot about a specced out display, then give a point to the Legion. If you care a lot about OLED, HDR, and color accuracy, then give it to the Steam Deck. And if you don't care about your display size and you just want a smooth experience with options, then give it to the Ally, since it has VRR and it has a standard 16:9 display that will be less prone to issues with games or emulator stretching. On the topic of issues with games, I used to think that Linux would be a limiting factor for the Steam Deck, but actually that hasn't been the case, at least for me. The only thing that I haven't been able to get running on Deck that these other two devices can run is Xbox Game Pass and a few games on Steam Deck with anti-cheat. On the Steam Deck, the only way I've found to play Game Pass games is to stream them over the Edge browser. That's pretty whack if you're someone who mostly plays on Game Pass and maybe can't rely on a stable internet connection. Other than that, emulators and other PC launchers have found a way to basically run flawlessly on Deck, give or take a few workarounds. This is super easy on all devices, so there's arguably no real difference in effort. The only limitation you'll deal with on the Steam Deck are just the games that aren't really optimized. You can easily tell with this little badge that Valve gives to games on the Steam store, and most games run fine, but check on the ones you plan to play and make sure that some of those run. And now that we talked about what will and won't run, let's talk about how well they run and for how long. As far as battery life, it's no competition. The Steam Deck takes this one easily. It has the biggest battery, uses less power, and has the power savings from OLED, so it's no question. The Legion has the second biggest battery of the three devices, and the Ally comes in last for capacity. As a benchmark, let's use Persona 5, since that is my go-to game I play on planes. On the ROG Ally, I can get an hour, maybe an hour and a half of battery life. On the Legion Go, I can get 2 hours of battery life. And on the Steam Deck, I can get 3 hours of battery life, but using TDP limiter and the FPS limiter, get closer to 6 hours battery life. I took the Ally on a 3-hour plane ride, and I was getting kind of worried when the outlets on the plane didn't work. With the OLED, I could do a round trip on one charge. And as far as performance goes, I'm gonna give you the details you need, and if you want more in depth, then go look at some other videos. Basically, up to 10 watts, the Steam Deck is the most efficient device. These other two Windows devices will slow to a relative crawl on anything below 10 watts, but the Steam Deck can live there comfortably. At 15 watts,
hey, what do you do? How do you know? Anyways, it's me again, and I'm here because, again, talking about those AMD drivers that just came out, they changed basically the whole section about performance. And I'll keep it short because I think after the Legion Go's update, the Legion can come ahead by up to 5 or 10 frames. There are a few configurations to keep in mind in the BIOS for the Legion to get it to this point, but after that, it really just comes down to all the other factors about this device to really see what you want. They're both using the AMD Z1 Extreme chip, so maybe in a few months they'll be so well optimized that it's not going to matter. And right now, it barely matters. Again, you're seeing the comparisons on screen here, and it varies wildly depending on the game and optimization, depending on the wattage setting. Sometimes the Ally comes ahead. It used to be really different, but now it doesn't really matter. Keeping this in mind for the rest of the video, make your own choice based on other factors. And now we're going to get into the emulation section, and keep in mind what I just said, that performance may have affected this slightly, but it's pretty neck and neck now. And also the Legion has some pretty interesting behavior that doesn't go away. Keep that in mind when you watch this next section.
Speaking of that emulation, the Deck can do emulation just fine, but when you get to the PS3 and the Switch, you're kinda gonna wish you had those extra 5 watts to get you into higher frame rates. Some games like Mario Bros. Wonder run great, but Tears of the Kingdom might not be up to par. Even Lollipop Chainsaw on the PS3 emulator runs great on Steam Deck, but you don't have enough of that wattage to get to a full 60 FPS. I mentioned in the Legion video that the reason the Ally tends to run better at 15 watts is because it tends to push above its set TDP, and that kind of does it on its own. 15 watts on the Legion is 15 watts period, but on the Ally, 15 watts is sometimes 15, sometimes 20. Same for the other power modes. Again, if you want to see more of that, then go look at the Legion video. The last thing I want to mention is custom TDP modes, and each device does these differently. The Steam Deck is the easiest, where you can set it and forget it anytime through the quick access menu, and the Legion Go does almost the same thing, but it's more clunky and it's kind of bugged at the moment. In my testing, you can customize it reliably in most games up to 20 watts, and afterwards it kind of depends, because games like Elden Ring, for example, when I set it to 23 watts, the wattage will just shoot up to the 30s and never come down. The same thing happens in other games, but at different thresholds. In Tears of the Kingdom with Yuzu, however, it was kind of weird. Depending on the OS power mode down here, the only system that has this by the way, I can get more or less the wattage I asked for and boost performance. The ROG Ally has this too, don't worry, but it's tucked away in the Armory Crate settings. You don't need to restart, so you can technically keep this open, and you can even set your own fan curves, which is good because I mentioned in the Legion Go comparison that this device runs hot, like 90 degrees Celsius hot sometimes. But in my experience, if you set your fan curve right, then you can worry a little bit less for a little bit more noise. So to summarize,
Hey, feature me again, and that whole conclusion is outdated after the Legion Go update, but basically, the Legion Go is performing better than the Steam Deck right now, but who's to say that the ROG Ally won't perform better in a future update? Also, the Steam Deck is obviously the king of battery life, but it's not that performant, so it kind of comes down to your preference on which you want, performance or better battery life. Technically, the Legion Go is performant and has better battery life than the Ally, but it's still way less battery than the Steam Deck. So seriously, at this point, it's preference. Now onto the ergonomics section.
Ergonomics, I'll keep to a minimum since it's mostly a personal feeling based on the shape of your hands, but for me, I have shorter fingers and wider palms, so it's mostly about how well I can grip the device. In my opinion, the most comfortable device is the Steam Deck. I also just like the fact that the joysticks are at the same height, but that may not matter to you. You get 2 trackpads on the Steam Deck, 1 on the Legion, and none on the Ally. Usually for me, the left trackpad is just for scrolling, but the Legion Go has a scroll wheel in the back of the right controller, which I use pretty often. The Steam Deck has tons of haptic feedback, so if that's your thing, then go nuts. And the Ally uses a desktop mode controller mapping, where your right stick is your mouse and your triggers are clicking, and it works. Maybe it's a bit sensitive, but it works. And yes, all of these devices have a touchscreen if you need it. On joysticks, to my understanding, the Ally and the Deck both use electromagnetic joysticks, but the Legion has Hall effect joysticks. If that means nothing to you, then don't sweat it. Just know that the Hall effect is a premium for some people. Me, I like the ones on the Deck more, since they're a little tighter and they're at the same level, again, compared to the offset for these other two. As far as buttons, I gotta say that to me, I prefer the buttons on the Legion. A clicky D-pad, strong face buttons, and the triggers feel pretty good. Next in line is the Deck, and this is perfectly fine. Membrane on every button, except for clicky bumpers, and a cushy cross-shaped D-pad. In dead last is the ROG Ally. These buttons are the most mushy, and the omnidirectional D-pad, while good for fighting games and platformers, is also mushy, which I don't like. Decent triggers, nice bumpers, and oh yeah, these macro buttons on the back. Each device has these. Steam Deck and Legion Go have 4, and the Ally has 2. But personally, I don't really use these, but your mileage may vary. The only quirky device here is the Legion, which is giving you the option to take the controllers off like if it was a Nintendo Switch. If you want more detail on that, go look at the Legion Go video, but the gist of it is, it's a bit of a gimmick. But if you really like the Legion Go for first-person shooter games, or as a Switch substitute, then it's a cool feature to have. These are pretty light, so if you have weak wrists, then just attach them and put the tablet down and you're good to go. The last thing here is portability. I can usually fit the Ally in a sling bag, no problem, which is nice when I want to go somewhere and not take my whole backpack. The Legion is the biggest and the heaviest, and it comes with a case if you need it, but the controllers do come off, which make transporting that thing this much easier. The loser here is the Steam Deck. While this thing is light and thin, it's also long, so you basically have to get a bag that is made for it, or use the included case and throw that in a backpack. Give your point here based on preference. The last thing I want to talk to you about is pricing. The Steam Deck OLED is the cheapest option, brand new, at about $600 after shipping and taxes for the base version. If you need something even cheaper, then you can shop around for an LCD deck online. Meanwhile, the C1 Extreme ROG Ally started at $700, but if you want to take a gamble, you can get an open box or used one from Best Buy. I say it's a gamble because a number of things could be wrong with it, like the SD card reader, which again is famous for frying SD cards. And finally, the Lenovo Legion Go hasn't seen a price cut yet, but you can find some open box units close to $600. And when you compare both the 1TB Legion Go versus the 1TB OLED deck, the Legion Go is more expensive, but you can actually get it for cheaper than the deck if you go open box. Again, your mileage may vary. Okay, so congratulations, you made it to the end. But let's say that even with knowing the intricacies of each device, you're still not sure of which one's for you, then let me decide for you. In front of me, I have 4 people that may be the target audience for these devices. Listen along and see who you align yourself with more. Sinket here is a really technical guy, but he's also just usually pretty busy with work or his other hobbies. He knows he wants an easy to use device, but also a device that's performant, and he's looking to play his biggest games in these short bursts of time he has. He also wants a decent display and doesn't mind paying a few dollars to get what he wants. In this case, I think Sinket should get the ROG Ally, since battery life comes second to performance, and hey, maybe Sinket has a portable charger laying around that he doesn't mind carrying. Sophia here is looking for something that can do most things well, but wants to have a device that is both very nice to look at and good to play shooters on and crank performance with. In this delicate balancing act, Sophia may want to go with the Lenovo Legion Go, since the FPS mode will help her with her shooters, plus the second biggest battery will keep her happy just a little bit longer. William here is looking for the best all-around device, plain and simple. If everything was taken into account, William wants a device that can play most of his PC games and maybe replace his Nintendo Switch as his main handheld that just works. He plans to travel a lot, but gaming is his main hobby. He also wants the nicest screen to look at if he can somehow get that in his slightly thrifty budget. In that case, William needs to get the Steam Deck. It's not really a question at that point. Now, Han is our last person, and we're out of handhelds, so what should Han do? Well, luckily, Han doesn't give a f about these big 3 devices. They're way too expensive no matter how you slice it, and she only really plays a few games here and there. So for Han, there's a world of alternatives. Han can get a small device like the Anbernic RG35XX and play tons of retro games. Or hey, almost everyone has a phone. Hell, nowadays you can really do most of your gaming on your phone if you really wanted to. From streaming services like Xbox Game Pass, or more local options like PS Remote Play, or even native stuff like Resident Evil games that are coming to iPhone 15, or emulators on Android. There's really a ton you can do already. Have a folding phone? That's basically a Nintendo DS. Before these handhelds, I would use this backbone controller and my iPhone 12 Pro Max to play some stuff over Wi-Fi or cellular. I even beat all of Hi-Fi Rush and High on Life just streaming them through Xbox Game Pass. Seriously. And yes, you could also buy any of these big 3 devices and use it for a deluxe streaming device when you're at home to save on battery or splurge on luxury. Oh, and I guess you could buy a Switch or something, I don't know. The possibilities are already endless, as long as you do your research. So that being said, what can we expect for the future of handhelds? Well, we live in a world of upgrades. Even the Steam Deck needed a substantial upgrade only a year and a half later to keep up with the competition. But that's without even releasing a Steam Deck 2, which is surely at least just another 2 years away. And who's to say that Lenovo and Asus won't also come out and release their own OLED models? Or the ROG Ally 2, or the Legion Go Plus or something. Ultimately, while I do think everyone should have a handheld device, I think that when you do get that device you end up going with, then do the following. Install the games you want to play, and if they run, great. Then this one small trick will keep your device running better than all the rest. Ready? Okay, here goes. Turn off your frame rate monitor and just play the damn game. Seriously. As PC gamers, we often fall prey to the numbers game of specs and frame rate, and we end up in this rat race of comparisons where no one's allowed to be happy. My biggest takeaway from testing all 3 of these devices is that in total isolation, all of these devices are perfect for what you want to do. If I didn't have the FPS counter turned on in all these tests, then I would have gone with the device that has the nicest screen or the longest battery life. And hot take, but while OLED is lovely to look at, when I have the OLED deck by itself and the Legion by itself, I can kind of barely tell that it's missing. What I'm getting at is, get the device that feels best for you, and then shut out all of the noise after. Trust your gut, and don't worry about upgrading as long as your device runs fine. When games start chugging or your battery only works when you're plugged in, then you can start shopping around again. It took me 3 devices to learn that lesson, so I'm just trying to pass my teachings on to you. You're probably wondering, which is the device I'm going with? I mean, I already have all these 3, but which is my favorite? Which one's the one I reach for the most? And I'll be honest, you might not like it. For me, the device I tend to reach for the most is the Lenovo Legion Go. It's charming, you know, in a way. It's not like as great as the Steam Deck in terms of most things, but when I'm at home, I tend to reach for the Legion Go. It's just something about the big screen and the detachable controllers that just gets me, you know? On the last trip, I took my ROG Ally over my Legion Go because it was more performant and the flight was kind of short. On that trip though, I really missed the Legion Go and the big screen and everything else on it, even though the performance was a little worse. I just kind of missed having it, you know? I don't really reach for my Ally that often, which is kind of sad. But the Legion Go is, again, my go-to device at home. But, and this is an even bigger but, the next time I go on a trip, I'm gonna take the OLED deck. It's just much better at that whole battery life thing, and OLED does look great. So I know I complained about the Legion Go at some points in this video not working the way it's intended to work or working in weird ways, but when I get it to work in the ways that I want it to, it's really fulfilling, and I don't know, maybe that's just me being weird. like falling into this sunk time cost fallacy, but no, yeah, seriously, I really like the Legion Go, and when it works well and I don't have to think about things, I just enjoy the whole experience. Yeah, those are my preferences. Thanks so much for listening. If this video helped you out in any way, then do me a favor and hit the like button. If you liked what I had to say, or you like the way we roll here, then hit subscribe to hear more from me. At this point, I'm kind of fully stepping away from the handheld device review scene, and I'm gonna start with game reviews and clearing my backlog in 2024, so stick around for that journey if it interests you. But until then, thanks again for listening, and have a damn good rest of your year. See ya.